In this episode of the No Emotion podcast, we are face-to-face with Jimmy Vallee himself of Vallee Capital. There's been lots of controversy and talk, especially, well, not especially, but directed at me as well as him and anyone involved in this buyback committee. In this episode, we talk about the future potential of all this blockchain technology and the industries that could be taken over and will be taken over. Also, how long it might take for these technologies in the blockchain environment to be taken over. And we also talk about the buyback proposal, and I ask him some really difficult questions on behalf of everyone watching this video. I hope you enjoy. For anyone watching this is a Sacred Stone studio in Houston, Texas. They set this whole thing up, got No Emotion on the screen and everything. It's real pro. Every person who's come in here today has said it looks real good.
It does.
So, if you ever want your podcast filmed, then you know where to come. And the guys here are great as well. They've adapted the room for what we needed. But Jimmy, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Lou?
I'm fine. Some days I struggle, I think.
We all do. That's the human journey.
Yeah. I think I struggle more these days because I announced I was on
you're an XRP holder?
Yeah. Well, that's enough stress. That's one level of stress. And then one day I decided to tweet that I was on the buyback committee, and that caused a new level of stress. But as you said off camera, that was my fault. Which it was. It absolutely was. And I remember seeing the email saying, you don't have to disclose.
Correct.
All of that stuff.
Yep.
And it's been wonderful for the proposal.
Yep.
And the awareness around it.
Yep.
I would like to know how much stress does it cause you during a typical day running all of this?
Less, because I'm not engaged on a minute by minute. I don't have like an audience per se. I don't have to. Your job is very, very difficult. Creating content. I don't know, how many shows do you do a day typically?
Well, every day.
Yeah, so at least one a day. Gathering new information, producing your show, doing the content, editing it, publishing it. That's very laborious, and I don't have to do that. So I'm able to kind of sit back and field just questions and comments from the committee members. And then what I like to do is have several days go by, package up kind of as much movement as we've made, and then get that information back out to the committee. We've for the past couple of weeks, we've been like very, very deep into the valuation subcommittee piece of this. So that's where all the action's been. We have a Signal chat group, and so everyone's been kind of putting forth their models, and we're kind of starting to get to the stage where we're discussing the assumptions in the models and things like that. So, for me, it's not that different than doing M&A transactions was for me in my legal career. That's the type of thing I did in representing boards of directors and special committees and stuff like that. So this is kind of my skill set, is to be able to herd the cats and try to keep us focused and keep us moving down the track. We've got some wicked smart people involved in this thing who are thinking about issues that even I, when I set out on this, wasn't really thinking about. And these are, things that play into how our economy is expanding, the type of assets that are going to come, into the economy over time. When you start to think about things, a decade out, 20 years out, 40 years out, you start to really say, okay, will we be mining meteors, 20 years from now, and some of these things that,
for those ores that we don't have right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
So, how do you not only account for all the, we want to account for all the world's money as it exists today, but also live with the, or live in the concept that we live in an expanding environment, and we have to project ourselves in the future and account for that, yet do that with enough rational thought and thinking that it's not just pulling numbers out of our ass, and that's tough to keep it in kind of a realistic world.
Or pulling numbers out of space.
Or pulling numbers out of space.
Yeah.
For example.
Is that the strangest way you've calculated value of all the money? Like to calculate ores that potentially will come from asteroids?
No, so That has been discussed,
Wow.
but we haven't included something specific for things like that. I think there are participants on the committee that would like that to be in there. I think we're resisting that, and really more looking at things from a cumulative annual growth rate that you can, once you wrap your arms around all the money now, and you say, okay, the economy is going to expand at, say, I'm just picking up 8.5% a year over time. If you extrapolate that out, what's it going to be in 2030 type of a thing? But the one thing where we do try to account for these unknown value propositions would be that the concept of kind of headroom, that, there needs to be a swag, call it 20% of all the, it's not unlike when a producer goes to, do a budget for a film or something, that you kind of cost out everything, and then you need kind of that 20% slush, that overage, to appropriately budget. So we're trying to put that concept of a headroom into our models.
So what kind of percentage weighting does that get, that headroom?
It's anywhere from 20 to 35%.
Okay.
That it's getting weighted. That's in what's been kind of put in the discussion so far.
Okay. So one of the, I've been seeking the answer to this question for as long as I can remember, and it's about the how XRP gets backed in a way from by a precious metal, or whether that's done by a basket of commodities. However that's done, no one I've talked to yet has been able to provide an answer for actually how that backing, because there's a percentage, or there's a calculation that you do to calculate how much the dollar, for example, is backed by the dollar, or the way gold would work in that. Do you know that calculation, like the formula for that?
I don't think there is these things are done on agreement, right? So there is no formula written in stone that you got to back this percent, this much gold has to represent 20% of the money or anything like that.
So who agrees that?
It's typically done at the central bank level. Like when the Bretton Woods Agreement was done after World War II, they sat down and decided that the dollar was going to become the world reserve currency, and that it was going to represent so much gold that when you turned it in, you could get that much gold back. Russia's basically done that exact same. I think it's 5,000 rubles per ounce of gold is what they've set their currency at. That means, if you take in your $5,000 ruble note, to the gold repository, they'll give you an ounce of gold for that. And that's effectively how it's done. I think
it's down to the individuals then. The individuals at the central bank. There's going to be a key person at each central bank who's deciding, who essentially decides the fate of all of that.
So these things, like every corporation, they've got directors and committees and advisors who are basically adding in. So it's not that, it's not that the head of the central bank guy gets to go, it's going to be whatever. I think that person is just like any other executive. They're putting forth the collective thought of that banking institution.
Okay. So how, my worry is that we're putting this whole idea of the backing situation up to the decision of old people. Fair point. Who have lived in the old financial system. And so that worries me quite a bit to think that that they would actually change. They might not even change at all.
They seem to be resisting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of situation do we have to see to convince the old people who run the world right now that this is a necessary change?
Well, I guess it's a pain pleasure type concept. Once the people are expressing enough pain and outrage towards their leaders, then things will have to change.
I talk with Black Swan capitalist Versan about this a lot, and he really believes that there's going to be an event that brings everything down to like the singularity in the financial world, where there's riots in the street, Ice 9 type thing. No one can get money out. You don't have food on the table. You can't pull any money out to buy food. there's craziness, there's riots. He kind of tends to believe that's the type of situation that we're about to see. I don't tend to think that's what we do see. Maybe we see it for a day or two, or it spreads for a week or something, and it's all over the news. But I don't see the moment where we start having to rely on our water and food stores as like a primary asset that's actually now really valuable. Where do you stand on all of that?
I think we are collectively creating our future together, and that the more dark vision that Black Swan is expressing there is one of many of a potential outcome futures. It's certainly a possibility. The other side, the more positive side, and I think you hear people talk about this in terms of, there's like a red pill and there's a blue pill, like from the Matrix, and then there's like black pills, which this dystopian, completely AI-run world.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of a black pill.
Human slaves, right, where you're literally like plugged into the Matrix and your energy is being used to basically support the AI. That's like this black pill dystopian world where there's the white pill, right? There's this where we come together, everything is being done for the benefit of humanity generally. So even environmental pursuits and things that are used more as a black pill trending narrative, climate change, things like that, are actually turned and used for the good. There's nothing wrong with cleaning up our systems and making everything more efficient, less environmentally destructive, things of that nature, right? So I think that we are at the point where we are starting to heavily influence which one of those paths we're starting to take. I would like to head in the white pill direction. I believe that reasonable people would prefer the white pill direction. Even the central bank leaderships and the Klaus Schwabs of the world would ultimately rather live in the white pill world. They just are having trouble letting go of their power from the past. This is your old people, generational dynamic thing.
My worry with that white pill is that who decides that? Because if it's the IMF, for example, and they say this is the white pill narrative, what's the difference between them saying we need to protect the earth and we need people not to eat meat, and this is the white pill narrative?
That is what they're trying with the narrative. They're using sleight of hand and trying to use these altruistic virtues, right, and holding those out. But the way you know it's fraud and that it's not true is that their solution is, so send me more money, right? So keep me elite, keep me where I'm going to Davos and flying in my 20-seater private G6 aircraft, right? That they aren't actually doing anything to truly benefit humanity.
Okay.
Who's going to decide? You're going to decide. I'm going to decide. Working together as a collective, we are going to decide. Ultimately, that's how it's going to do. And by the way, that's either way. Either we will decide to take a knee and surrender our God-given sovereignty to these people, or we will stand up collectively, reclaim our sovereignty, and move the collective consciousness into a white pill type future.
Okay. I almost firmly, what am I saying? I'm on the side of, I think I know what will happen, but I know what I want. I want that white pill
Amen.
thing. I want that for everyone.
Yep.
I don't think it's going there.
Yeah.
I think we're going to like a black pill, maybe a purple pill, a bit of red and a bit of black.
So everyone's journey, we need to see the black pill. We need to see that needs to be experienced as part of. This is getting deep. Did you know it was going to go this way?
This is what I want. This is what I want.
This is what you want. Okay, cool. Because I'm happy to go as deep as you want.
Please.
There are symbolic things and ritualistic things that play out in our collective consciousness. Sometimes when you're a kid, You know, at least this is the way it happened when I was growing up. Sometimes when you're a kid, you're doing wrong stuff, you needed to get a spanking or be sent to your room without dinner or some punishment of that way. And the benefit of that was your parents would hope that you would learn from that experience, from that pain, and you would direct yourself in the future in more, you know, collective, productive pursuits, okay? The world may be perceived as substantially out of whack, off kilter, and a lot of it comes from what we're taught by the media, right? So we're living in this, and the reason that, you know, shows like yourself are, I believe, rising in viewership and all this type of stuff is because we're starting to learn that what we're being told by the mainstream is not true, that there are agendas behind that by governments and others to put a false facade of what is reality, which then influences us, and we end up kind of manifesting from a fear-driven thing, right? If they can keep us in this state of fear, then we'll continue to manifest more kind of dystopian bad type things. So I think what we're going through now, I think, is a very healthy process, a ritualistic process of seeing death, seeing a death type experience that we have to all, you know, whether that be our assets be taken away, our children be taken away, these very dark things that are happening, see what it would really look like for AI to control things without the moral and spiritual compass of humanity, you know, playing a role in that, governing that. We're getting to see that. And I think that's why for a lot of people, it looks like black pill is where this is headed, kind of almost a Terminator type, you know, thing where the machines are going to run everything. And you know, that again, that could happen. I think we're going through this death ritualistic experience of seeing everything be taken away from us, of living in Klaus Schwab's world for 5 minutes, right? So that it is literally like branded on our souls that that's not what we want, and we want to take it in a different direction. And I believe that that's happening, like individual by individual, having conversations like this, and as this type of message and collective consciousness is more brought together, we will start to ascend as a collective, and things like things that are important to us in a material physical consciousness will not be as important to us as we ascend. Other things will be more important. Love, you know, more positive attributes, helping out people, helping out common men, realizing that we're all in this together, these types of things. Right now we're in a very lack, greed, focus mindset. We're hoarding, you know, we're trying to, you know, make those last few dollars, last few pounds in your case, stretch to the final mile. And to truly ascend, we're going to have to let go of that. We need to let go of that. We need to open up to this new possible white pill future, just to put a name on it, and start working together.
I just, because of the way it is right now, we are, that's exactly how we're all feeling. But it's also how we're feeling in this specific niche, because I think my channel's grown quite a bit. It's not a big channel, but it's growing. Yeah,
that's great.
But when you think about it, it's 50,000 people just on YouTube, but there's not a lot of people, and there's not a lot of people actually putting thought into this whole thing. My thought process is that whatever they want to do as a larger agenda, wherever they want to take it, people are just going to follow. It's just like a sheeple mentality. And I just don't see that. I don't see that changing. I think the whole Corona thing, the moving away from a gold-backed dollar back in the 70s, I think it's all part of just a narrative that I don't really understand, but it looks like there's a narrative forming where you just increase control, use specific events that happen, a financial crash, which was inevitable if you move away from a gold-backed currency. It's always going to happen. They were saying it in videos back then. It's going to happen at some point. Here we are, it's happening. In order to get it to that final point where it drops down, we need to create some mass hysteria, and through that create some control. Just, it kind of all just makes sense like that. And I think everyone's going along with it. People still, the vast majority of people still believe that that nothing malicious is going on there. They're out there for us. And I don't see out of the tunnel. But I've been around for 30 years, and this is probably the worst it's been in that time. So I don't have a massive perspective over time on this.
Yeah. So
for me personally,
I'm older, but I think for me as well. So in the 70s, inflation got way out of control. Like interest rates and stuff were up, and like I remember hearing from oil and gas executives that I was working for that back in the 70s when they were working on stuff, interest rates for some of their debt was up 15, 18%. And so there have been dark cycles before. We had a Great Depression before, right? Back in the 30s. I don't disagree that the current powers that be want to take us. There is this problem reaction narrative, problem reaction solution thing going on, right? And that they are very focused on trying to enslave us, probably push us towards a black pill dystopian type future. The question is, are we going to accept it, right? I'm not gonna.
Well, I agree with you. I think we're on the same boat.
Yeah,
I just think the masses will.
I think the fact we're even having this conversation is a sign. The fact you have 50,000 people who are listening to you, and it's going to be 100,000, and it's going to be 300,000, is a sign that we've already pivoted and it's starting to change.
Yeah.
So I'm also very interested into as much as I'm in the XRP community and stuff, I'm also very fascinated with like the truther community. Very familiar with that, that group of people. So these are more of like your patriot people, reclaiming sovereignty and stuff like that. I see us all kind of connected. In fact, I see it like we're all in this same band of time.
I agree.
All fighting the exact same war, but we have a different, entry point into it, a different perspective. Because I was a corporate lawyer, a business person, I came into this from a very financial perspective, which led me to the XRP thing and the types of stuff that I've been espousing and proposing. Whereas some of these other people are coming from this more of a service of country, and they're being woken up to things relating to that. And so you're starting to see military-minded people starting to wake up and become leaders in their own groups, have their own. I mean, their channels are exploding as well. Yeah. So those two groups are massive, and they're starting to merge.
Yeah, and I find it interesting. You can ask anyone in the XRP community, like. You can speak a truth that you feel, and it's probably the same truth that they feel as well, and that's how they.
That's right.
It's really interesting. Like
that's
that.
right.
It's a strange community, the XRP community.
It is, which was what really influenced me as I started to look in early on. So I kind of figured out there was something going on. I went through a very dark period. During 2020. Let me tell you, when you start going down the rabbit holes and you start learning about the human trafficking and all the different stuff that's been going on that we were oblivious to, that we were asleep to, you end up in some very dark places, right? And, fortunately, because I went through that and learned a lot of that and spent months and months and months, maybe even a year and a half in that dark place, I emerged out of it maybe quicker than a lot. I think some people are still having to go through the more dark, look how screwed up this is type of thing, to have that seared on their soul. Like, I will never be involved in those activities, ever. right? In fact, I will spend the rest of my days combating those types of things. There's another timeline, right, where I just continued to do what I was doing before, and I probably ended up being compromised, and no different from a Hunter Biden or a Jay Clayton or any of these people who basically took the money, but then, you know, took some action that was, you know, morally or ethically destructive. So anyway, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but
it's all thought-provoking.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I struggle to answer myself is there a moral dilemma for being involved in XRP, considering that we know where it's going, CBDC, surveillance, limit where you spend your money even because it's programmable. We know that the key to all of that is the XRP ledger and having all the value stored there and flowing through it using XRP. Being involved with Ripple in any capacity is also accepting that future, but being in a position of taking advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like benefiting from the dark side.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that?
I understand what you're saying. I don't, because I am focused on headed towards the white pill version of this. But what your comment goes to is, like, we see Brad Garlinghouse meeting with the World Economic Forum and the IMF, and, you know, things of that nature. So naturally you have to question, is this technology being, you know, used for good or bad? And is my adoption and use of the technology, if it's ultimately going to be used for bad, am I basically participating
right.
and bringing about the dystopian piece? So technology is not good or bad, right? It's an evolution of mankind, it's an evolution of consciousness. There are people who will use technology for bad things, and there are people who will use technology for good things. The internet, you know, there's pornography, there's dark web, there's, you know, all kinds of things that are on the internet that are horrible, horrible things, and that criminals and bad people have used for bad purposes. There's also, you know, the fact that we can even learn about XRP and these memos that the IMF and the WEF have put out and all this stuff is because the information is so available. The fact that we can even learn about our history, about how the Fed came about and central banking systems and Bretton Woods and all these things, we could not have. It would have taken years and years and years to go into libraries and dig into the level of information that we're able to get through because of the internet. So
it's kind of how you view it is how it is. If
you could say it that way.
If you think it's the dark side, then it is the dark side.
And it may even be more powerful than that. So I think what the dark side has done is they know that we are very powerful creators, okay? Very, very powerful creators, and that we are able to actually manifest things. And they have weaponized that against us, right? And they've weaponized it against us by putting things like movies that show very, you know, whether that be slasher films or even superhero films and stuff that show very significant, you know, destruction and things like that, things like the whole world blowing up. Or remember the movie 2012? Remember everybody thought the world was going to end in 2012, and they made that movie, and you had to get on the ark and get out of there. So, you know, in a way, you take this in and you internalize it, and then you end up kind of, you know, it ends up seeping back out of you in manifestation. If we all basically start to manifest towards a more positive future, then that would happen as well. So you could reverse weaponize this, right?
You're right. That's a good point.
And some would say, some would say the buyback might have been a really nice little weaponization of this exact type of thing that is then pushing us towards another timeline as well. So whether it be more positive content, more positive movies being made, I've always been a big believer in, almost hypnotizing myself, right? So I go on these long walks and stuff. I haven't done it in a while, but for years and years, I would go on long walks and I'd put on some, really positive things. I'd put on positive affirmations. I'd just listen to stuff over and over and over again. And that ended up manifesting in my world. That's a reason I attracted wealth into my life. There's a reason that I, became as successful as I was as an attorney. And I believe it's a reason why I've, become as notorious as I have in this whole XRP thing, is because, there are deep-seated, plans, beliefs, things that I'm acting on that is basically manifesting that in my world. Yeah. So
I can see that.
Yeah.
I think you make the most impact in the world when you have when you affirm to yourself consistently over time.
Yep.
I really believe
and
that.
I also think that the going for good and going for basically all good of all people, so doing things in a way that are win-wins or doing things in a way that uplift humanity, is more powerful than the dark side, right?
Yeah. This part of the podcast is brought to you by Ubit. Ubit's this really simple to use platform where you can buy and sell XRP and a multitude of other tokens really easy in a really simple way. A lot of these other exchanges that you use can seem quite complicated, especially for people just starting in the space. And one problem that we find with a lot of exchanges is that you can't move off immediately onto cold storage wallets. On Ubit, you're able to move immediately. You buy your XRP, for example, and you can move it immediately onto cold storage wallets without having to hold it in Ubit for a certain amount of time. So if you're feeling extra bullish after today's conversations about XRP and these other assets that we talk about, consider using Ubit to buy your XRP. Back to the episode.
I think the dark side struggles with creativity. I think, they really aren't that good. That's why Hollywood has sucked for years and years, right? Because they just keep rehashing
the same
story over and over again.
Yeah. So I want to talk briefly about your past and all of the work you've done in the energy area. Because when I was looking through your documentation of all the deals that you've facilitated, it's crazy. It's so much there. I thought it was going to be 2 pages, but it went on and on and on and on. So considering your involvement in the energy world and acknowledging that everything is going to be run on blockchain, how does that integration work? How do we see blockchain? Because I saw Kathy Wood talk about this once. That actually triggered my desire to deep dive, because she said all of energy is going to be on the blockchain and run on blockchain. And I thought, how is that even possible? I thought crypto was money. That's where I was at that time. So I realized there was a huge gap in my understanding of what blockchain was, so I needed to learn. So I don't think there's very few people more qualified than yourself to talk about how those two worlds overlap. And then maybe how we might be able to benefit from that.
It's thank you for that question, because this is the thesis behind our business, Delta Wave Energy.
Okay.
I think when Kathy makes comments like that, it's not that you're actually taking the energy and putting it on the blockchain. It's that you're taking the value representation of the energy and putting it on the blockchain.
I see.
So what Delta Wave is seeking to do is you kind of step back and you think about the accounting cycle in the normal oil and gas life cycle is really 90 to 120 days. So it's a long gap. And so this is what happens. You are a producer and you produce, say, natural gas. That hits a meter on, say, January 1, okay? The midstream takes that, so the pipeline company takes it, goes and it processes the gas, so it's providing another service. It takes it down to its constituent things, methane, propane, the liquids fall out, condensate, things like that, all of which are marketable, have different values. Right. But that's what the processing thing does. Then they take the pure stream gas and send that ultimately into what's called local distribution companies, okay? And in other cases, it goes to refiners, things like that. Like oil is definitely something, a refined product. So there's a downstream kind of segment of the business. So basically it's the customer, then that comes to your burner tip. Like back to natural gas, that pure gas stream comes to your burner tip and you're able to cook your meat on it or whatever, right? So you pay a bill that's then aggregated by your local distribution company, that's then paying the midstream company, that's then paying the producer. And so that whole value proposition basically equates to where the midstream isn't paying the producer for like 90 to 120 days. So we thought, and there's accounting disputes and all kinds of stuff that's happening, you know, because the producer's got his own set of books based on what they saw hit the meter, based on what they were pricing the gas at that time. Right. The midstream company's got its own army of accountants that are basically doing the same thing. And so it's a very siloed, choppy type industry, okay? So what if you could leverage the power of blockchain technology for several reasons? One, to have one truth, right? That basically when the transaction hits the meter and that's published to a blockchain, it's stored there forever, it's immutable, can't be hacked type of a thing. Everybody could look at what's on that, look at that data and say that's what occurred, right? There's no need for kind of accounting disputes and things of that nature, number one. Then also, what if you could use the power of being able to basically stream out this value to all the constituent parties? So you've got owners of, you know, like the owners of the resource who actually lease that to the mineral owners, leased it to the oil and gas company, right? You've got taxing authorities who need to collect severance taxes when those hydrocarbons are severed. You've got the midstream party who's providing those services and processing and transporting the natural gas. There's and on and on and on. You have all these different constituents that are part of this ecosystem. What if instead of having to go through all that process before someone gets paid and then account for it, if it just streamed as soon as it hit the meter initially? So
that seems like a massive upgrade.
It's a massive upgrade. And, you know, shockingly, as we kind of went off in this process, we thought, you know, we expected a lot of resistance. First of all, the oil and gas business in particular is notorious for being slow on adoption of technology. Point of example, we had seismic technology available for 50 years before it became commonly adopted in the oil and gas business. You know what they were using in lieu of the seismic technology?
Go on.
They were using something called a divining rod. You know what a divining rod is?
Well, no.
It's basically a guy walking out with a piece of metal stick going, the Lord says the oil's here, so drill here. That was what the divining rod was. And when asked, well, we've got, you know, you can do this seismic, you can shoot, you can actually see the strata underneath and see if there might be hydrocarbons, you know, producing quantities there. They'd be like, well, we've always used the divining rod. It's got a history. So that for 50 years, that was basically so. So the oil and gas, we expected a lot of resistance into the adoption of this type of thing. We've sat with many very senior, you know, oil and gas executives, some of which were like former clients of mine or whatever, and they're like, this will never happen. You're basically talking about settling the entire supply chain instantaneously or in near real time. Near real time, they're like, you're never going to be able to do that. And we just sit there going, okay. I mean, watch, you know, just watch us do this. And so it's not, to bring back to Kathy's comment, it's not that we're actually taking the molecules and putting them on the blockchain. It's that they're being accounted for with this technology, and then we're leveraging the speed of those value transfers and the fact that we all agree on the same truth to basically rapidly speed up the distribution of value.
So that sounds very much like, was it fractionalized banking or smart contracting debt, basically. So I'll try and explain my point. So when we look at XDC as a smart contract medium, if you want to get a mortgage, you get that put on the XDC network, and then you can sell your mortgage to someone else, and that goes down further down, further down. So more value every time on every layer. That new energy system sounds like smart contracts galore. So smart contracts everywhere, instant settlement using something like the XRP ledger. Have you had talks or what have you kind of suggested to these executives on the medium by which you would facilitate all of that?
So we like to engage in the discussion on the cost savings, right? Because you're basically talking about taking almost your entire back office of accounting and financial functions, and basically you don't need that anymore. Yeah, for the most part, maybe you need 10% of it. Yep. So the operating expense, the operating costs of running a business, an oil and gas business that is leveraging blockchain technology is going to drop like 40%. It's like massive savings. So the businesses that end up just like it's going to have the same things happening in finance right now, as you point out with XDC, XRPL, and others. If you've got a business, if you've got a delta wave driven business, it is almost by definition more efficient than its competitive legacy energy business. It's not even close.
No, it's completely different.
In a business, by the way, that's all about efficiency. Right. Like the whole thing is about eliminating, drag and friction in a system. That's the whole thing. So what I envision that Delta Wave will start to do is it'll initially start to just do single contracts, and then it will buy a business, right? That business is going to become effectively the anchor tenant of them, what becomes effectively an M&A play. And you just start going and buying up all the things. And, left unchecked.
That is wild.
Yeah.
How big is that industry?
It's multi-trillion-dollar industry. I mean, the global oil and gas business is massive. It's massive. We think that Delta Wave is worth about $50 million right now, and it's really not even implemented, right? There's a company called Data Gumbo that's just like sourcing oil and gas data and putting it in. They got a $400 million valuation. So, and then what we want to do with it, again, I'm an M&A lawyer, right? I want to, so not only do we want to, this is going to blow your mind.
Blow my mind.
Because this is nirvana, right? So not only was I like an energy M&A lawyer, but my specialty was something called master limited partnerships, which were publicly traded partnerships. That means they are partnerships for tax purposes. They do not incur an entity level tax.
I see. Okay.
But they are publicly traded, so retail investors could invest in. You can grab that retail equity money, right? But effectively, they're pure cash flowing vehicles. In real estate, you've got REITs, like real estate investment trusts. Yep. So this is like the oil and gas analog to a REIT. Okay. And there's other businesses like that. We've envisioned you could do this type of stuff with entertainment as well. But think about, cash flowing entities that have to distribute as much of their cash flow as they can. So you can cover the operating costs, but everything else needs to be distributed to the people. Okay. So you got this blockchain leveraged, oil and gas company that's like spitting out this value in near real time. And then you have a blockchain corporate structure that's securities are tokenized, and you're able to pass that value through to the equity holders, to the investors of the business and the taxing authorities. You're talking about the most efficient business probably that's ever existed. Yeah. So this wouldn't take that long. This is what's been crazy is you work with the developers on this stuff and you kind of explain, and they look at you at first kind of like, that's weird, but it's kind of cool. So I'll like spend some time working on it and billing you for it, Yeah. And then they just keep coming back going, wow, that exists. Like this technology, Circle exists for a stable coin. They'll pay you 6% interest. There's this, that you can put this on chain. There's this. So really this is about like knitting APIs together for these different things. It's not even really that hard. No. It's just thinking about it, creatively putting it together. This is what I think the creative deal makers of the future will be doing.
That has blown my mind, actually, because that's been something, and I'm sure no one in the audience has thought about this as well, but we always think about tokenizing different industries.
Yeah.
But that is a complete upheaval of the system.
It is.
Making it extremely efficient,
And think
saving
about
money across the board,
Correct.
and making crazy amount of money.
Making crazy amount of money. Very few people making crazy amount of money, because it's about what's passing. We need to start seeing ourselves as stewards of value as it's passing through us, and just taking off a little bit for the effort, right? I'd like to be known as Mr. 1% one day. Why? Because I only had 1% of everything, right? Yeah. And it's passing through, really. It's providing that service to everybody else, you know, and providing that concept. But blow your mind even more, we touched on there, so that's, you know, that equity piece is kind of getting into capital markets. Imagine when the entire capital market infrastructure is tokenized, all securities, all bonds. The SEC is freaking out about this. The legacy banks, they're freaking out about this. They see very clearly where this is going. And that's how they make all their fees right now, is basically creating all these hiccups and frictions and pulling investors together and taking companies public and all this stuff. That's where they make all their massive fees, right? All that's just going to go away. But imagine being able to take some Amazon stock that's on your phone and hitting the gas pump with touchless payment and being able to pay for unleaded gasoline with your stock. Or your miles, or your anything. You got some baseball cards, you an NFT. You can, and you mentioned the fractionalized thing before. Yeah. You know, like in Africa right now, there's these cocoa bean farmers, right? And they make like $1 a day, right? And it's because all these kind of centralized middlemen swoop in, aggregate their stuff, create a market kind of somewhere else. They're storing it. They're deciding who gets the cocoa bean deals and everything. And so the person who's really creating the value, the farmer, and is putting in all the effort, is getting like peanuts. You know, they're basically starving. Well, imagine if you take that same person and you eliminate all this friction, these middlemen people, and you're able to get them what they trade in, which is mobile minutes for the most part. They don't even use
SIM cards.
Yeah, they don't even use money, right? Yeah. Imagine you're able to get them mobile minutes, but because you've eliminated all these middlemen, instead of paying $1 a day, they're making like $5 a day in equivalent, you know, mobile minutes and stuff that they're able to spend and they're able to invest.
Yeah.
Imagine that they're able to invest in Delta Wave with their mobile minutes because they've got connection to the XRPL, and they can flip those mobile minutes over into whatever Delta Wave's taken as equity.
Well, you raise a really good point that we talk about in the channel as well. It's interoperability, but I don't think we give enough respect to interoperability, because, and you brought up the perfect point there, sell an NFT or a Pokemon card or something, and that's represented digitally, tokenized NFT, using anything to pay for anything, is true interoperability, which is full utility rolled out.
Yep. When
do you think that happens? How far away are we from not just the world moving into smart contracts, mortgages being tokenized, and all of that, past that, where the slowest moving industries like gas and oil, where they are tokenized and they're running at full pace? When does the whole thing spread across the world?
That's a really good question.
Are we thinking
it's speeding up, right? So even the benefit of COVID was that all of us had all this time to start doing all this research. Like, you've created a channel now and a brand and all this stuff you've been able to do, probably in part because you were set off on a path that you just had a little extra time to think about stuff, right? That accelerated dramatically the adoption of digital assets and the use of stuff, and certainly our education on how these things can be used. Are you familiar with the virtuous cycle? And kind of ties into adoption.
A little bit, but please explain as well for everyone.
So, there's a white pill black pill version of this. The black pill version, and I just want to point this out so that people can see the virtuous cycle piece so clearly. When a company starts going into what we call the zone of insolvency, they enter into something that we frequently call a death spiral. Okay. And so what happens, like when Enron went bankrupt back in 2001, long before you're bankrupt, there starts to be, these kind of chinks in the armor, okay, right? There's talk or whatever. Enron had actually used some of their equity stock to collateralize debt servicing things. In those debt instruments, they had default triggers that basically, if your credit rating fell to a certain level, if it fell out of investment grade, and then there was kind of tiers going down, that you had to post more and more collateral. Right. Okay. So what started to happen is, as people started to question the credit ability of Enron to pay back, well, as the equity market started to hear that, they started to sell the stock. Yeah. Okay, so the stock starts dropping at the same time you're having to use it to collateralize more because you're triggering, defaults here. And you enter into this basically cycle, this downward cycle. You're kind of just imploding, right? And the further it goes, the faster it picks up. That's why we have bankruptcy, right? Bankruptcy is basically to stop the spiral and allow people to have the time to, rationally and take the time to negotiate the various things. But ultimately, it means the people with the debt are going to get wiped out to the extent it's unsecured, and the equity is going to get wiped out, right? So that's the bad version. In fact, I went to this conference in 2004 with a former general counsel of Enron, was talking about what it was like to live through those days that they entered into the death spiral. And this is the day of fax machine and notices by fax. He said the notices of default were coming so fast. They had two major fax machines. They couldn't keep paper on them. They were just spitting out defaults so fast. Wow. So that's, kind of what it feels like when you kind of go into this. It's so chaotic and it's all just hitting you at once. That's the death spiral. The virtuous cycle is that in reverse. I see. So, and this is discussed in the Athey-Michnik paper as well. So they talk about it. It's kind of an adoption credibility cycle. And then they use an example of the U.S. dollar being adopted or gold being adopted. And so what happens is with money, there's basically two uses of money. There's the transaction use of it, so using it to buy and sell things, and there's a store of value, okay? And as the thing becomes more used in transactions, the desire to hold it back and store it as value for the use in future transactions becomes greater. Right. You're taking more off the market. The spending power of the thing, starts to go up. Therefore, more people are using it as transactions, and it then causes more people's. And so it's a spin kind of in reverse. And that's something we're trying to model. With the valuation subcommittee right now, is kind of how do you come up with reasonable rates of how that would happen, which plays into this. What's the rate that this adoption could occur and sweep across the world? It's moving faster and faster all the time. Right now, as I sit here today, for everything, I think 30 years.
This part of the episode is brought to you by Neonlink. And a big thank you to Neonlink for sponsoring this part of the episode, because they are an up-and-coming gaming-focused blockchain. Neonlink is launching with a complete ecosystem, with a chain, a token, a DEX, a bridge, a wallet, NFTs, and naming service, and in addition to that, games as well. Built for gamers, by gamers, Neonlink's debut AAA means top-tier game, Ascend the End, is going to be epic. Gamers and developers can enjoy a seamless onboarding experience to Web3, while Web3 gamers can expect a smooth, low-fee, and rapid chain to experiment with. And then there's Neon Saga, Neon Originals, Neon Punks, and more. There's so much to go and check out. Follow them on Twitter at Neon Blockchain, and check out the website neonlink.io for the white paper and more. Back to the podcast. Okay, that seems reasonable.
I think 30 years would be literally everything.
Yeah,
the farmer with the mobile minutes to JP Morgan.
Yeah,
Everybody's going to be on chain.
That's when people make a business and they don't even consider the old way. It's just you tokenize. It's tokenized.
That's just the way it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what could speed that up is some, there's an event, right? There's a switchover type thing, because the world we're living in now, and the reason it looks so dystopian is because the liabilities of the global economy are so stratospheric. A lot of it's not even known. Like, we can't even wrap our arms around it. That's what, like, the BIS is coming out. Oh, it's 80 trillion missing here, and there's 65 trillion missing here, right? These types of disclosures didn't happen 5 years ago. Right. And these are trillions with a T we're talking about. These are it's hard to wrap your mind around these types of things, right? So if you think about the accounting equation, so there's assets minus liabilities equals equity. Okay, the liabilities are so stratospheric based on what the value of the assets are that we have negative equity. Right. So we're basically bankrupt as a world. There's two ways to do that, right? You write up the assets. There's another word for that. You know what it is?
Nope.
It's called inflation.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I did know that.
Yeah, you did. You just weren't.
Gotta let everyone know. Explain it to everyone.
So that's what the central banks right now are trying to calibrate the economy, right? They got their tweaker, and they're looking at the needle. They're trying to basically get the inflation rate up enough where the assets will rise and it'll balance out the liabilities. The problem is the liabilities are so stratospheric, like the train has left the station. You can't do it. You actually need to come together with some type of a global agreement that we're going to reset the assets. And this is what they've done before, right? This is when resets have occurred before. So gold, it typically always goes back to gold, right? That they would say, all right, gold's at, was it $1,800 an ounce or something?
I think so.
Yeah, $1,900 an ounce. We're going to make that $35,000 an ounce, right? And that will bring these liabilities back in line, and we can go another 50 years, with using a gold standard type thing. I'm a proponent of kind of all the above, like that should be a step we take, but gold has a transportability problem, right?
Yep.
So we now have this brand new asset class, these digital assets that did not exist in prior resets. And for the most part, those things aren't really on the balance sheet. Like, what's the market, the entire crypto market right now is like $1 trillion, right? Got up to 3, but it's down to like $1 trillion now. That's like a pimple on the ass of the global balance sheet. So why not take that asset and write it up to basically equate to the value of, all the assets and the debt, right? And reset it that way. And then you don't have to basically put gold on military aircraft and be sending it back and forth between countries. You can be settling up all the time on XRP or, digital assets. And then periodically, maybe quarterly, maybe once a year, you would send the UK would send America its gold if it was net owing gold, or it'd send Saudi Arabia its gold. See what I'm saying? We would just balance out. We would true up periodically, and then everybody keep going.
If gold was revalued and all the precious metals were revalued, and could they be revalued in such a way where debt was erased? And to follow up from that, if we did erase all debt and the debt was no longer going to be tokenized and put on the XRP ledger, for example, that would impact the price of XRP, right?
Mm-hmm. I think...
To what degree?
So I guess because I negotiated deals my entire professional career, my mind attempts to drift towards what would be fair for both parties or all parties. I think it would be unfair for debt holders to basically get wiped out, for the debt to be forgiven. I think it would be unfair to write up gold and have that be the only kind of move you made, because not everybody holds gold, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the central banks have been acquiring it, but like Canada notoriously doesn't have much gold. The United States, I think, our gold had been given away, but I think we have successfully repatriated a significant amount of our gold. So I think the United States has got it. I think the UK's got it. I think Saudi Arabia's got it. I think Russia's got it. I think China's got it. But there are certain countries that if we just did gold and didn't have, like Saudi Arabia, I don't think was willing to do just gold. I think they were like, we want oil to be part of the mix.
The basket.
Yeah, part of the basket, the commodities basket. And I really think that that's been part of the deals that got struck in the prior administration in the United States, that's how they were able to focus on things they had in common versus differences, things like religious differences. They focused on one thing we have in common, or that we really need to reset this system, get everyone back on the level playing field. Currency should be 1-to-1 when we restart. Yeah,
it's a tough, and I think it really helps that you've got such a rich history in deal making, because you can come at this thing, especially like the buyback proposal, which we'll move into now. That whole document is essentially a deal formulated by one of the best deal makers in the world.
That's kind of you to say. It is certainly the first piece. It is a deal.
Yeah. So
arguably whether I'm one of the best or not.
Right. Well, you've got the history to show for it. So.
I appreciate that.
Which I advise everyone to go and I'm sure there's some public forum where you can see all the things you've been involved in. And if there isn't, there should be. So I sent you our media kit, which has got all that stuff kind of packaged up and put together. Yeah. But maybe we would publish a few pages of that or something, and people could start to. I think it's valuable.
Yeah.
The problem I have with it, the buyback, and actually for everyone who wants to know, Jimmy and Vallee Capital did not coin it, the buyback.
That's right.
That was created by the crowd.
Not you.
Yeah, not me.
The marketplace coined the buyback.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually supposed to be called that. People did that to it.
I think we called it the proposed terms for the purchase of XRP from participating token holders.
Right, which would be a professional title for such document.
Right.
Not the buyback.
Doesn't make a good thumbnail, though.
No, that's right. If we're heading into a financial crisis and liquidity is the big problem, how will they have enough liquidity to pay X amount to all the token holders to buy it back?
So this ties into these commodity reset type things, right? Yeah. So there was certainly an appreciation that, first of all, one of the key things of consideration to be paid to the participating token holders in the buyback. We don't call it that, but everybody else does. So it's a good euphemism. Yeah. It's the buyback. Who cares? It's semantics. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Is a asset-backed ESDR, right? So we wanted digital currency that was truly asset-backed. If this thing were to ever get legs and get traction, the main job of the lawyers and the investment bankers that were working on this deal on behalf of the participating token holders would be to verify through due diligence that these things are actually asset-backed. All right. So that probably requires more of a global deal, right? So there's almost a necessary condition that there's a global currency reset, an asset-backed system that is put in place before they could ever actually implement what we call the buyback. So the liquidity would come from, because they've basically written the assets back up, and they can just produce or issue the ESDR and just say that we claim. So, there's supposed to be like a liquidating agent that's, some major custodian, some major trustee type of a thing that, as the consideration is developed, that's kind of put in the trust. People tender in their XRP here, right? And then the way we thought it would work naturally is that whoever that custodian party is basically going to be in the best relationship to have a commercial relationship with the participating token holders going forward. And so what it would be like is not unlike if you were a very wealthy person and had a trust with a certain institution that was the trustee. You'd say, you know, like Lou would be like, oh, I'm going to buy my kid a car. And you'd call up JP Morgan or whoever it is and you say, you know, I'm participating token holder. I'm account number 30775. And, you know, I need 100 grand to go buy the Range Rover for my kid, right? And they're like, yes, sir, Mr. Jackson, here you go, boom. And so that's what like the relationship would be like. And that's why one of the reasons why, you know, the legacy institutions should be competing to play that role, because they're going to be in the pole position to have that relationship with some of the wealthiest people in the world, right? The participating token holders.
So that's essentially giving custody of your XRP.
The XRP they're going to take and use. You've sold it, right? If you participate in the deal, you've sold your XRP.
That's right. Yeah.
You now have an account that holds a bunch of these. Again, in our world, these ESDRs that are asset-backed ESDRs that you can use to get dollars or pounds whatever you want. Okay. You've got a trust fund. You have a trust account effectively that's got all your value there. And yeah, it's be no different from holding your money in a bank account right now, except it's more like super money, right? Because it's international. You could pull any type of credit. It'd almost be as if you had a big bucket XRP sitting there, you know, and you were able to use that. But the other thing behind this, right, is the establishment of fair market value. So this may be the plan. The plan may be to use XRP as the world reserve currency, right? The problem they have is that they're all on that side of the table. So they can't really like, you know, they know it's the plan. They can't like establish that to be fair market value for us. They actually have to engage in a open transaction of some type to set where we know that that's their plan, right? And that we would be willing to sell our property for that value, right? That's how they would actually establish the fair market value, which will then imply or infer the value of all their holdings. So let's just say that there was one global bank. There's one bank, you know, just for the sake of, you know, kind of figuring this out. There's one bank and it already holds 90% of the XRP. Only thing is it's got all these liabilities and it's 90% of the XRPs at 35 cents. And so it's not near enough to basically offset, to be an asset that offsets those liabilities, right? They need a transaction where they can write up the value of their XRP.
Yeah.
Why not buy the 10% that's out in retail? We think it's substantially less than that that's out in retail. We think it's between 0.5 point and 2 points of the whole thing that's actually held by retail. So $500 million to $2 billion.
Okay.
Of the whole thing. So anyway, they got to buy the 10% in our example here. And why not set the price at the high price that you're now 90% does cover all of your, you know, all of your liabilities. That's how it works. And this is just like basic, simple. This happens every day in capital markets and, you know, this, you know, when Elon bought Twitter, right? Twitter was probably trading at, I don't know, $43 or something a share. And he said, I'm going to pay 50, was it 54.20? There was a 420.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay 54.20. And that represented a premium. But the value of the company then was worth what he paid for it, because that was a fair market value deal striking thing.
So how reasonable do you think that how reasonable do you think the recipients of this, as in the people who you are providing the proposal to, how do you think they view it?
We have the whole range of emotions and responses. I get a ton of emails from people and calls to the firm and stuff of like, this is great, I want to participate in it. And we get a whole lot of people going, you are batshit fucking crazy. You know, you have no idea what you're talking about. And everything in between.
Who's on that side? Are the important ones on that side? on the more negative response?
We believe the more positive people are the more important ones. The more important ones to us. That's who we're basically working to help.
But there's a
They would
difference
be the
between
participating token holders.
But there's a difference between the most important ones.
So this is, I'm glad
Objectively.
you're bringing it like this, because this kind of gets into, we as a society have been giving more value to people like on TV, or people we perceive as billionaires, or what I like to call the celebrity investor class.
Okay.
Your Kevin O'Leary's of the world, your Jim Cramers. I know you guys were talking about Jim earlier. For some reason, people just think that if you were on Shark Tank, then you're the smartest person in the room, and they don't seem to give much value to kind of regular everyday folk.
Okay.
And for me, I think the exact opposite. Like, I spent a whole career working for those other people, and I want to work for the other guy now. Okay. That's a little bit of my, it's a calling, that I have these skills, I have this skill set. It was not very emotionally and spiritually fulfilling to continue to basically put notches on my belt at the next $1 billion freaking thing. At some point, the numbers don't matter anymore. They're just, oh yeah, I did that one, and I billed a lot of hours, and billing hours sucks.
Yeah.
So, to have value in this world, you need to figure out a way to provide a bunch of value to as many people as possible. If you provide service to as many people as possible, you will have value, right?
Yeah, you get remunerated for the value you put out.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And this is massive value. This deal will probably never occur.
Do you think that?
I think I think it's more likely than it was last year when we initially proposed. So we initially proposed in September of 2021, then we kind of re-upped in late October. I would have thought back then it was, I don't know, single-digit % type things happening. I think we're like 23 to 24% now.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's like we're all traveling down this path, and like, if someone else has a better solution, just put it on the table. I would love to discuss it. So just put your own idea out there, and let's talk about it. But we don't seem to have a lot of solution providers. We got a lot of critics, but not a lot of not anybody like truly thinking this stuff through. How could we go about doing this? Bretton Woods was just a freaking business deal. A bunch of people got in the room, said we're gonna do this going forward.
Yeah.
This has happened multiple times in history, and by the way, the other way that this gets resolved are through revolutions, riots, war. I like to think, notwithstanding what's going on in Ukraine, between Ukraine, Russia, and the whole Eastern Europe thing, I think humanity has gotten to a level we don't need war anymore. Yep. We can actually sit down at a table and negotiate and have the power of the pen be how these issues get resolved. Yeah. And this is one way, probably not the way, but it is one way that you could see that this gets worked out. So 23% probably.
It's great growth and progress.
Yeah, if it goes another 4 years, it would be right up there at 100%, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I can't speak with 100% confidence because this is not really my world. But it's my understanding that an ESDR can't be owned by private entities or private.
Yeah, I think that's if you read the materials, I think that's what they say, because it never has been.
So if XRP is an ESDR, what do you do about the dust in like the 0.25 XRP in a lost wallet? The
dust. I'd never heard that term before.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I coined it. But
the lost XRP.
Yeah, because I've got 7 XRP wallets. Yeah, 6 of them I don't use.
Right,
and they've got. Just because there's always a little bit left.
Oh, you're right. It's down to 10 because you got to have 20 initially. Now it's down to 10 to have a wallet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you got to factor that. That's effectively been burned for all intents and purposes, right? So but probably over time, the validators will vote, and that'll go down to 1 or whatever. I mean, just there's a internal strive for efficiency that is happening all the time within the XRPL, right?
Yeah.
So just like they voted to go from 20 to 10, there's probably a time that they would vote to go from 10 to 5, 5 to 1.
Yeah.
Now, that's a different issue from what I thought you were talking about, which is like the lost. So there's like people who've lost their wallets, right?
Well, it could be that, but also I could go and log into a wallet that I've not used for ages, and let's say XRP is an ESDR and it can't be owned by private individuals.
Yeah.
And then I log into my wallet that has, now I own that again because it's not lost.
Yeah. So this is a good question. The way we've thought about this is kind of what will the regulatory regime be like on the other side of a deal like this, right? So there's this opportunity. Everybody in the world knows you can participate in this thing. It's like a generational wealth type of thing, but they'll probably be like, and if you don't, you're not in the market anymore. You know, that's just whatever's stranded, the dust or whatever. If you don't tender into this transaction, we basically aren't going to allow the rails in and out of the asset anymore.
That'd be rough.
Through a regulatory. Well, I mean, here, you know, the hardest thing about what we've been up to is we don't have a dance partner.
This part of the episode is brought to you by Minima. Minima is the world's most decentralized blockchain, and their public pre-sale launches in February 2023 and is open to everyone. Don't miss your chance on being part of the revolutionary technology that is setting a new standard in the crypto industry. Minima's network has no centralizing elements, and it's completely run by its community. Join them on the journey of genuine decentralization and visit their website for more information on the pre-sale and connect with them on Twitter and Discord. Minima is leading the way in blockchain decentralization. Back to the podcast.
We actually need the other side of the table. Now, if I was on the other side of the table, I would say, yeah, I'm going to do this deal, and I'm going to, you know, enrich this handful of people, you know, versus the global, you know, to basically reset everything. But yeah, I would say on the other side of this market's foreclosed to, you know, the people who don't participate, the retail level people that don't participate.
Yeah. I have a theory where you could incorporate some common sense as well. And I wonder if that was actually a consideration in the number that you come up to in the end anyway, in the proposal. But there's a reason that XRP have drops. That can lead us to the natural conclusion that the price has to be high, among all of other things, value going through the ledger and all of that. We know it needs to be high. But if you've got drops, surely we should think about what is a reasonable value of a drop that makes sense, that justifies having drops. So for me, that doesn't go below a cent.
Yeah. So that's a $10,000 XRP, right?
Right.
Is that
because
one
it'd be
penny
strange
is,
if we're now using drops to pay for stuff, it'd be weird for it to be below a cent. So that's not, it wouldn't be, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
So it has to be higher than that.
Well, and what you're really also saying is if it's higher, you basically have turned that last drop into less than a cent, right?
Yes.
And you're saying that doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Okay. So this conceptually, I think, gets into this common type of discussion you see where on that side of the world, so now we're in this asset-backed world because the debt's been addressed.
Right.
XRP is XRP. It's not equated to a dollar in the way we think about, because the dollar is presently the world reserve currency. Yeah. So naturally we're trying to give it a dollar valuation. Yeah. Well, on the other side of this, the dollar representation of a drop is not going to be what's important. It's a drop's a drop, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, but you got to kind of be on the other side of that, in the new world, in the new economy, you know.
It's like we're trying to make sense of it now when there's a completely different
it's apples and oranges, right? You're trying to take an old physical fiat world and apply that value to this new thing, which is only going to be relevant in the transitionary time period, which is what we're living through right now.
Right. When do you think is the latest the proposal's on the table? So if we put a timeline out there to say court case is done, some regulatory clarity comes in, on-demand liquidity starts being used because of that regulatory clarity, and then like where along the line does it become too late for the proposal?
The buyback thing?
Like yes, the buyback proposal. Like, is it always on the table?
That's a good question. The last time we kind of put it on the table for a number of days, like a couple of weeks that they were supposed to engage. I want to say when we sent it in on October 29th, we gave them to the 5th. But that was try to create some urgency for them to engage and get going. That wasn't like to do the whole deal or anything. So there's a lot of like assumptions we'd have to make to kind of put us into this world. So first of all, if just resolving the lawsuit isn't going to make the XRP holders whole, right?
Okay.
That we believe they've been damaged by virtue of the lawsuit.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, Deaton's coming out saying they've been damaged. What people are reluctant to do is, other than say, oh, the first day the lawsuit was filed, the market cap dropped $15 billion. So you can point to that and go, $15 billion left the market. That's not even the real damage. That's like a data point. The real damage is, for 2 years, we haven't been able to see the adoption of the asset in its fulsome thing. There hasn't been that progress towards the infiltration of all these other markets, the adoption in all these other markets, towards that thing that's 30 years potentially away, right? We haven't made any progress. We'll never get those 2 years back.
No.
Never. I mean, they're lost. There's no telling where we would have taken that value had the free market truly just been allowed to run without, the government's finger on the scales here, right? So there's certainly a need to have the damages model, the fair market value kind of exercise that could live past the lawsuit, the resolution of this specific lawsuit. I think really what you're asking me is, what's it going to take to make Jimmy shut the fuck up and go away?
No, not at all.
No. I think you're doing it in a real polite way. You're British. You would never say it that way. This is the way an American Texan would say. We would be, and I've said this recently, like we want the free market to be working. We want the government out of the way. They don't seem to know what's going on. And every time you have these senators and stuff coming out, road showing their latest crypto bill, they just show that not only do they not know what's going on, they don't seem to care much what's going on. It's about who paid their last campaign contribution. Was it FTX? Was it Multicoin? Was it Galaxy Digital? Who's putting their hands in all these pockets, right? There needs to be a return to kind of equilibrium. And that's going to, regulatory clarity is a big step towards, taking that. But I think it's regulatory clarity plus righting the wrongs of the last. I think we need transparency. I really think in order for us to heal and move on, we need to know all these shenanigans that took place around the Ethereum free pass. We need to know what happened. We need to know about the memos that got written, all their deliberative stuff that they did to drive off down this path. It's probably the case that they did criminal stuff. And it's probably the case that some people may need to go to jail so that this type of thing never happens again. But we need to know. We can never... we can never unscramble the egg and go back to kind of everybody, you know, being joyful and, you know, working together if we don't have justice for what occurred, which is now, I mean, we're now in the 5th year since the Ethereum free pass thing. So I think we got to have much better transparency from the government and the regulators, number one, like a commitment to it, you know, like they say on their website, like in the mission statement, full accountability, working for the American public, all that kind of stuff. We need to see that for real. And we need some type of damages payment to people for the 2 years. It doesn't have to be the stratospheric in-game, whatever that's going to turn out to be. You know, we're still very much in the process. We kind of determine that, but you know, it's $50, $100,000, $1 million. I don't even know. We'll see where the data takes us. But it wouldn't have to be that. You know, I hate to like throw out a number what that would need to be, and I think there need to be damage model people think that through. Right. But it's not one of these stratospheric numbers, I wouldn't think. And yeah, I think if you kind of do those couple of things, you compensate the people for the damages, we have true regulatory clarity, maybe even fund kind of a developer type of a thing, not unlike Ripple has done with their NFT development fund and things like that. But you have the government to create a slush fund for developers to basically catch up to speed on developing projects on the XRPL. Okay. Developing more utility, I think, would be a really, really good thing to have. I'd say if you do that, where we are today, January 2023, I would probably put my guns away, you know, and start to be like, this is a good, okay, I feel like we've come to a good place here, and let's throw the chains off and let's go.
I like that you're optimistic about the future, and you're speaking it into existence in a way.
I am. I don't think the negative way or the pessimistic way is good for us. I don't think that's going to take us anywhere good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Maybe I feel like I've been locked into that more. I don't know why. I lean towards that side, but I certainly think the way you view the world is how you act. Mm-hmm. And is how the world becomes. So I agree with that. Final question.
Yeah,
we've gone over on time here.
This is the coolest format I think I've ever done. By the way, this
Good.
is very, very cool.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, you should do more of this.
I have to fly to Houston
every podcast. Or move or whatever you
do. If you had $10,000, knowing what you know in the industries that you know, what 5 assets would you distribute into?
So I can just tell you what we hold, right?
Sure.
So yeah, and say if I were to allocate, so we have precious metals. You know, we're commodities trading, so we're investing in. We're further down the chain. So you know, mining, getting your hands on precious metals, both physically and even you know, ownership of, you know, public mining companies, things like that, be good.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, if you think, you know, we're going to a precious metal backed, you know, system, that be good to have some precious metals.
So what percentage are you allocating to precious metals in general?
So the percentage is further out of whack than it should be. You know, of my 10,000, I'd probably put 20%.
Interesting.
In the precious metals. Then I would stake out my blockchain kind of fintech businesses and get equity in those. So what we have is you know, we got some Ripple equity, which I own personally Ripple equity. We have some Uphold, very bullish on Uphold, largely because they have been so good in this whole process. And they are tip top. So, you know, we've had the good fortune to meet with a lot of these executives and stuff and have conference calls with them and talk to them about other things. And, you know, these people they view the world the way we view the world. They're about this more positive future and not the dystopian side.
Yep.
PolySign, we've got some PolySign, and Link2 we have. So that's kind of our that's our equity side, fintech, blockchain tech. Delta Wave, we've got Delta Wave, which is more.
I got to look into that.
Of venture capital. So deltawave.energy is the website.
Okay.
So we're obviously pursuing. So that's I think for other people to get involved in something like that, you would just be looking at more technology driven oil and gas type things.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not even a good one to put out there. I was just kind of going down the things we're holding. We do hold digital assets, right? Materially, we're XRP holders, but we have some XLM. We have a bunch of Pack Global, that's basically worthless, but it's spitting out 20% Pack coins, and we're starting to use it for its intended purposes. So we could see building some things on the Pack Global network. There's a company called I think it's called Radio Logistics, which is a healthcare company where they're storing all the healthcare data, which is very very memory intensive. It's mega, gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of stuff when you start looking at, like x-rays and things like your medical history being on this. But they have a really cool interface to basically pull that information. Your doctor can subscribe in, pull it and stuff like that. So we can see things like, building some media type companies on those types that are more kind of data storage, kind of doing like what Library was trying to do. We see a huge need for a decentralized, blockchain supported, blockchain leveraged media business because, YouTube and others can play with the allocate. I'm sure you live with this all the time, with knowing that this, counterparty to the contract can wake up one day and say, I give you this many, this much money for the 1,000 views. Now it's going to be half of that. Right. And what are you going to do? Right. So let's see.
It doesn't sound like the allocation percentage wise is that high for digital assets. Or is it?
Well,
Is it more than precious metals?
It's not more than precious metals. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But if I were just taking 10,000, I would do probably 20% in, like the tokens we know, like the XDC, the XRP, XLM.
Wow.
The ones that are going to be part of the new system. We wouldn't, we would never spend any on Bitcoin or Ethereum. We know way too much about those projects to be able to put anything at risk. Yeah.
Well, maybe I can hear about that information at lunch
off
camera.
Yeah, for sure.
And I appreciate the time that you've given me and
absolutely. No, I really enjoyed this format and everything, and it's nice to meet you in person. This was cool.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You bet.